No matter how I introduce this movie, nothing will compare to how Gene Siskel introduced the original on Siskel and Ebert.
The little girl from E.T. can now start fires just by staring at something. E.T. phone 911.
God, I missed that. I'll give it this about the new Firestarter. It isn't a carbon copy remake of the '84 film. There's lots of pacing it does differently. There's different things they do with the characters, and I'll get more into that in a bit. There are still some nods to the other one, though. The opening credits look about the same, and while it isn't Tangerine Dream doing the score, they have John Carpenter doing some of the music here, which is funny considering he was supposed to direct the first one. The musical score is very good in the film, and the first 20 or so minutes of it, I was kinda with it to a point. I do dig the hell out of the first one. Sure, the characters in it weren't that deep, and some were about the same by the end of it as they were at the beginning, but it was definitely the performances of David Keith and Drew Barrymore that gave them likability, and it was great at building up the tension and suspense that leads to the climax. Here, it does get deeper into Charlie, Andy, and Vicky's home life, way more than in the other one. You spend a lot of time with them as a family, and we see arguments between the parents about how she should be raised, and how she should be taught to harness her powers. It starts out as a good arc, where soon it's gonna have to be Andy who is the one looking out for her. I do like one part where Andy is using his powers to be the world's greatest hypnotherapist to get people to stop smoking. He's gonna put Quitters Inc. out of business in a single day. Plus, you really see the tragedy of the character at first, where she hates herself, and how this power is destroying her. Kiera Armstrong is very good here, even when they have her saying some stupid shit later. Alright, so the movie started out okay, and then it got not as good, and then it got worse, and then by the end, it's just downright fucking awful. Once we're past the time they put into this setup, it's just a quick, cheap race to the end. Gone is any kind of character they set up. Who cares? Throw it all out the window. Imagine you're watching the first one, they get to Irv's place, and directly after, they're like, no, fast forward to her taking over the shop. In the '84 movie, the villains all stole that flick, and were a joy to watch on screen. They didn't so much have a backstory necessarily, but you got who these people were. Here, the villains are among the worst things about it. Oh sure, they give them like a sentence of backstory, but that doesn't really matter if they're lame. Rainbird just goes through the film with these poorly delivered monotone lines and acts like he's the Terminator chasing down our heroes. They know he's evil from the beginning when they see him, so gone is any of this stuff about pretending to be a janitor. I almost would have preferred if he just stayed like the Terminator, because what they do with him at the end, it makes no sense and is so not earned. Gloria Reuben as Hollister just feels like a stock businessy villain you'd see in a mediocre Liam Neeson movie. The more it goes on, the less sense it makes. Sometimes I couldn't tell if they were gonna make Charlie a villain because the writing is just bad. She'll just torch someone who really doesn't deserve it, but then spare someone who is wildly more evil, all within like 5 minutes. The original was flawed, sure, but it's a good time, carried heavily by the actors and the cinematography, plus the great Tangerine Dream score, and the absolute batshit and downright impressive climax. I wish I could sit here and compare something like that to something in this film. But damn, you can see the budget restraints here. This movie doesn't even attempt to do anything close to this. Oh sure, there's a few fires and a few extras. Ooh, sweet. It's like you're watching a remake of Carrie if all she did at the prom was just clog the toilets. Not only does it feel like you're watching a bad superhero origin, but they even say in the movie, you're like a real-life superhero. It doesn't help that the climax here reminds me of that climax from the 2015 Fantastic Four, only with the budget cut in half. So yeah, it's paced differently than the other, but more like you're just speed reading through the book. Yeah, I know I'm comparing it a lot to the 84 movie, but I did just rewatch it for a review, and it's hard not to compare them because the 84 one was at least consistent and certainly felt theatrical. This movie is also available on streaming, and that's where it belongs. In the first act, I was like, yeah, okay, this is kind of B- territory. Then it was drifting off into C, and by the end, oh no, this is a hard D. I did not care that much for this movie. But hey, check out the Cinema Snob episode on the other movie while you're at it, and we'll see you next week with a review for Downton Abbey: A New Era. See you then.